According to the Federal Reserve, prepaid card transactions grew by 33% per year from 2009 to 2012 and now total over 3 billion transactions annually. Experts say that's affecting the way you and I use our checking accounts. So we'll examine what that does to your finances with Curtis Arnold on the Dollar Stretcher interview. Curtis Arnold is founder of CreditRatings.com and BestPrepaidDebitCards.com. He's also the author of How You Can Profit from Credit Cards. I've known Curtis as an expert in the area of credit cards for nearly 30 years. Curtis, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thank you, Gary. It's great to be on this cutting-edge technology, and certainly great to reconnect with you. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I know this is probably pretty simple, but just in case somebody isn't real sure, could you define a prepaid card for folks so they know exactly what we're talking about?
Yeah, you know, there's some confusion about what exactly is a prepaid card, and it's kind of like a debit card, but it's not a debit card. A debit card is typically tied into your personal checking account, and so when you use it, you know, the money comes right out of your checking account. A prepaid debit card is like a credit card in that it's separate from your checking account. It operates totally independently, and you actually load money onto that prepaid card like you would a gift card. But the difference in that and a gift card, to further confuse things, is that a prepaid card usually has a Visa, a MasterCard, a Discover, American Express logo. And you use it just like a regular credit card or debit card, but the fact that it operates independently gives it the benefits of a credit card as opposed to a debit card. But the upside is you're not building debt because you can only spend what you load onto the card, so there is no interest that's paid. So it's a great budgeting tool, and that's one of the reasons these prepaid cards have really taken off in popularity.
That was my next question, because most of the increase has been since 2009, the credit crash as well as the Dodd-Frank finance bill, correct?
A lot of it was fueled the growth of this prepaid card industry following Dodd-Frank, but more specifically, it really was fueled a lot by the growth in terms of the anti-bank sentiment. Gary, if you'll remember a few years ago, we had this whole boycott Wall Street thing going on up in New York, all over the country really, and that anti-bank sentiment, it's died down because you used to hear about it almost every day, but the sentiment, even though it's not making news every day, the sentiment there, anti-bank sentiment, is still very strong. So that's one thing that's propelled this prepaid card growth, and particularly among certain people, age groups, the millennials, the 20-somethings as they are called, they just really don't trust banks. Not just them, there's other groups as well. A lot of folks have this sentiment of not just trust, lack of trust of banks, but wanting to control their finances more, take things in their own hand. A prepaid card, Gary, is becoming increasingly, and we're following this on bestprepaiddebitcards.com, a quasi-checking account for a lot of folks out there. Very interesting.
Now, for people that would consider replacing a checking account with prepaid debit cards, what does that look like?
Well, you know, it sounds crazy, but a lot of folks, you know, Bluebird is a new card from American Express, been out about a year or more, and a lot of folks that are starting to find out that you can use these prepaid cards as checking accounts are loving it. And it works out just like you would in a normal checking account in terms of there's online bill pay where you can pay creditors. A few of these cards even offer a check option, so you can write checks. You can capture through apps on these cards on your phone. You can make deposits. So it's kind of crazy. The technology there has allowed us, just like you and I are speaking, with these prepaid cards, to really perform a lot of the same roles that you would, you know, get with a checking account. The big advantage is the fees, not all the time, but in a lot of cases, if you're selective, if you shop our site and find a good low-fee prepaid card, the fees are a lot lower because these overdraft charges on checking accounts, I just did an interview with the Wall Street Journal, helped a lady last week, and she did a big front-page story, but these fees on checking accounts continue to rise, and I don't see that changing. And so that trend has been going on for years, and it's only getting worse, it seems.
Well, now, obviously, especially the dollar structure, we're always opposed to fees, or we'd like to avoid them wherever we can. Now, are there pitfalls in the fee structure on the prepaid debit cards for consumers?
Well, there are fees, and in fact, this prepaid card industry has been associated with high fees for years. When we entered this, when we launched bestprepaiddebitcards.com about a year ago, we made it a mission to expose those high-fee prepaid cards. We've had some success, but also we've had other success. Some of the big banks, American Express, Chase, have gotten into this market. And this market, the prepaid market, traditionally has been associated with small banks, or even not banks, but just financial groups that sponsor a card. And so now that the big boys are getting in this industry, you're seeing a lot of these fees come down. And you're seeing a lot of these, what I call the celebrity, the celeb prepaid we hear about, and I will name names, don't mind doing that, but you know, Rush Card is associated with a big name celebrity. You got Justin Bieber, just all kinds. But anyway, some of those cards, a lot of them have been associated with high fees. The newer cards that the big boys, the bigger players have introduced, such as a Bluebird, such as a Serve, Chase Liquid is another big prepaid card. They have really lowered the fees significantly, so much so that the fees are actually, if you're selective in what you shop for, are very limited.
Now, besides comparing fees, are there other perks involved in these cards that consumers would need to take into account when they compare one versus another?
Yeah, some of the newer cards that have been introduced, and I don't want to just pick on Rush Card because they have lowered their fees in the last year, but some of the bigger players have bells and whistles, product features, if you will, such as the app, the online banking, just a lot of the similar type benefits that you would associate with a traditional checking account these days in terms of doing stuff online or by your phone and really paying your expenses. So a lot of these type features that folks enjoy, but pay through the nose with a checking account. I mean, every time you get hit with an overdraft on a checking account, it's 10, 15 bucks. I just had a friend in before this interview started. He gets whopped $17.50 for every overdraft on his checking account, and typically has 10 to 15 overdrafts a year, which is pretty typical. I won't say his name. I don't want to embarrass him. But these are the kind of things you get with a checking account. You get walloped upside the head with fees. You still got fees. You need to watch out for them. But if you shop around on our site, you use some discretion, you can get away with very limited fees on these cards, and if you're savvy about it.
Now, one thing I know, at least I heard consumers complaining about, is that they'd sign up for a checking account under certain rules, and then slipped into a statement and print that you need a magnifying glass and a lawyer to read. There'd be a change in the fee structure, and they didn't realize that their fees were increased. How stable are the fees on the prepaid debit cards?
Well, they're getting a lot more stable as prepaid is becoming much more mainstream. But having said that, the feds are looking at regulating this industry more. The Consumer Protection Bureau, but they're targeting prepaid. But right now, as of today, there aren't as many regulations, so you need to be aware of that. Now, on the flip side is prepaid, like the Bluebird, is FDIC insured, so there is some protection there. And I think the movement we're seeing in prepaid, because it's just exploding, is you're going to see the regulators come in and add some regulation, which I think we need. Be healthy for the industry, but right now where it stands, do be careful. We try to be on guard for that on bestprepaiddebitcards.com, constantly monitoring the situation, doing news stories, etc. But there's not. The good news is, like with credit cards, historically you hear about the bait and switch where they advertise your rate and and then jacked it up. And some of that still goes on, with these balance transfer offers that cardratings.com, you mentioned, I founded about almost 20 years ago. But with prepaid, you don't get that because there's no interest involved. So the only way they can really get you, Gary, is fees. And as long as you look at those fees on the front end, know what you're getting yourself into in terms of monthly fees. Some of them do offer some upfront fees. The good ones don't, in my opinion. But once you kind of know your monthly fee, what you expect based on how you're going to use that card, that's important. Because if you're loading so much money on that card every month, say your paycheck, a lot of times you can avoid fees altogether.
Now, do you have any advice for somebody who is about to look at getting a prepaid debit card for the first time?
Well, I think it's just a great thing to consider. It's out of the box, again, to possibly not always replace your checking account, but supplement your checking account if you want to keep your checking account. Savvy consumers have learned to use a prepaid card. Let's say you're saving up for a trip. You got a big trip planned in the summer. You could do your budgeting for that trip, load that money onto that card. Let's say you're going to spend $2,500 on that trip, load that on that card, and then just use that card during your vacation. And it's just a great budgeting tool without getting yourself over in debt, because once you spent the $2,500, it's gone. It's not tapped directly into your checking account, which also from a fraud perspective and identity theft is a big concern for me and obviously millions of other consumers. You got to be careful using that debit card, because I just had this happen to me, Gary, a month ago. I had a Starbucks charge for $100, and Starbucks is expensive, but their coffee is not $100 a pop, and it's close to it. But I saw a Starbucks charge for $100, and I was out of my debit card. So these are ways to kind of protect yourself from that potential.
Now, I know you started bestprepaiddebitcards.com about a year ago. Tell us a little bit about the site and what's all there, and what viewers can find there.
Yeah, sure. We launched bestprepaiddebitcards.com about a year ago. It's great. It's grown. What our aim was, Gary, is to really expose some of these high-fee prepaid cards. This industry had just gone amok wild. It was the Wild West out there, and no one was really concentrating on this industry. It was exploding and growing, but no one was focused on it entirely. And so we said, hey, let's be the first that we know of to. And there has been a few other sites, I should say, but there's not been a site to do it with the data and the breadth that we do, that we're aware of. And so we want to bring anything prepaid debit. We also cover secured credit cards on our site. We also cover what in the industry is called subprime cards, but these are cards that for people trying to build or rebuild their credit. And so we have a section on that. But we're mainly focused on prepaid, but we go beyond that. And so how do you build credit? And we help folks with that. So there's a wealth of resources on the site. We're hoping to add some, we've added consumer reviews section. We're constantly adding new editors' reviews of cards. We think we've got more data on prepaid than any other source out there, offline or online either. But we want to help. A lot of these prepaid users, Gary, are in, Hispanics is a big, Hispanic population is a huge user of this. So we want to help those folks if their goal is to have financial independence, which most people's goal is. We want to help them to get, establish credit, budget, use money wisely, help them to use this prepaid as a tool, and then also, to use a secured credit card to establish credit and to build that good credit score, and use, prepaid can be a stepping stone in that situation.
Well, Curtis, we thank you for sharing your knowledge about prepaid debit cards with our viewers today, and we'll provide a link to your site as well as naturally the Dollar Stretcher. And we thank all our viewers for joining us, and we'd ask that you follow our YouTube channel and join us again soon.
Hey, Gary, thank you. And hey, again, I like that Chicago Cubs coffee mug. Go Cubs. Appreciate your time, Gary.
Thank you.